Today's the day for real talk. Product for today, Arise Manufacturing Optic Plate System. People should be familiar, but just briefly. Optic plates, if you use a pistol equipped for a red dot, most times the slide will be cut in a way that you could use use an optic plate with a variety of footprints, so the slide's not cut just specifically for one optic. So you use a plate, which you attach to the slide, which will then be specific for the model of optic you want to put on top. Hopefully everyone understands that, but I hate to assume, because you know how assume is spelled out. So I'm going to tell a brief story about Arise Manufacturing that hopefully Jordan won't mind me telling. Jordan's the owner. It was maybe a year ago. Nick Young and I of the Alex Training Group were teaching a class in Texas, and it was actually in it was breakfast, I think, in the lobby. Nick and I were eating at the hotel before heading to class. This guy comes down, he just walks up. It's like, oh, he already knew Nick. He walks up and just starts chatting. Hi, my name's Jordan. I'm like, oh, it's nice to meet you. He's like, yeah, this company called Arise Manufacturing, and we're just kind of chatting back and forth. It's like, hey, I know you shoot Walthers also, like Nick. I brought you some plates. This is just a startup company, something we're making. If you'd be willing to just give them a try. And I remember the words he used. Just tell me, good, bad, or ugly, what you think, if you like him or don't like him, if you don't mind. So I'm like, oh, well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And he's just so nice. He's, if you don't like Jordan, or you have something bad to say about Jordan, it's probably a reflection on you more than a reflection on him. He's just one of those guys. He's very upbeat, very nice, very outgoing. He could walk up and start a conversation with anybody. So Jordan's that level of nice. I liked him immediately. So, yep, okay, sounds good. I'd be happy to. Thanks. I will give them a try and let you know what I find out. So I got home, tore a gun apart just to give these plates a try. The first product he came out with it's called the Aegis. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, but it's a plate that's got two holes in the sides, or each side of it, that's made to accept this shroud also. The shroud goes over the top of the optic, attaches with those holes, so two holes on each side, and it's just made to protect the optic for, I suppose, duty or just protection for whatever you do with the gun, I suppose. I don't do anything cool, but I am aware other people do cool stuff. So that's his product. It's an optic plate. I'm like, yeah, sounds cool. I'll give it a try. Well, I'll talk through what the Aegis is, I guess, real quick. If you kind of look from the side, you can see it's not, I'm trying to get a good angle. So it doesn't actually clog up the window or anything. It's very thin around this, and then there's a little bit of an overhang in the front. So if you wanted to rack the optic or something like that, you'd actually be racking it off the shroud, not off the optic. So it's just sent there to protect the optic. So anyway, gave him a try, and there's a couple things I noticed. Well, it just so happens I have one here that hasn't been opened yet. I don't do unboxing, but I'm going to rip this one open just to show you the product. It's not on a gun. When you get it, it comes with this. This one's actually going to our friend Mr. Steger in a couple days, so it's just hanging out at my house in the meantime. Jordan ships them with a paint pen, which is a very nice step. You should be witness marking your screws, and a QR code if you want to watch instructions or whatever. So anyway, just tear this bad boy open and show you what it comes with. Inside, we have the plate. Of course, the thing I like about his plates are they're labeled. I know other people do this too, but this one's Delta Point. It's Walther PDP Delta Point Pro. LR is Lowrider. So it's easy, just because if you have them in a stack or you get them mixed up, it's easy to tell which one's which I like. Then also with this, comes with Loctite. He originally shipped it with, I think it was Vibratite, something like that was the name. I tried it a bit. I was like, man, I'm not sold on this stuff. I know some people that like it, but it wasn't for me. I was like, man, I like Loctite better. He did some testing. He's like, yeah, I think you're right. And then he just changed. And the next thing I knew, they started shipping with Loctite. The other thing I really like about these, the hardware is all labeled. I could fan this out very well, but they say step 1, step 2, and exactly what they are. So here's step 1. This is the optic plate hardware. It says a thread pitch. And wouldn't you know it, it comes with 3 screws and the bit also, the Torx bit. 3 screws just in case you lose one, eat one, you know, whatever, in case it disappears. Break one. Super nice. Most of them just come with 2. So you got an extra screw and a bit, which is a nice touch. Then, for step 2, this would be one of my comparisons to other products. It's got the thread pitch there labeled also, what it's for. So here's Hollow Sun, or this one, if I could read through the back. Trijicon SRO, or all the Vortex Defenders. So XL, ST, or CCW. Because this one is a Delta Point Pro plate. So anyway, it's that's what length the screws are for. Anyway, I like that the hardware is all labeled. And the step 2 screws, fan them out, all come with 3 screws also, which is just a nice touch. So anyway, that's what comes inside the container. The first thing that jumped out at me when I was testing the plate or installing it on my first gun is how tight the plate fits to the gun. Set it over the top, and it's not like you have to jump up and down it or hit it with a hammer, but you just push down with your thumb a little bit and they kind of snap in place. I like that because it's tight on the gun, and you lock the slide open and set the plate in there. It snaps into the place. Well, so comparison, some other plates, when you set them down, they'll kind of slide around and you have to look to line up the holes, then put the screws through them. This one snaps in place hard enough. You could tilt it upside down, it doesn't fall out. Or just let the slide slap shut and the screw won't fall out, or the plate, I'm sorry, won't fall out, which I found to be super impressive. The other thing that jumped out at me right off the bat is the little bosses on top. So not where the screws go. It would be the 4 corners, the little posts where the Optic slides off because it's a Delta Point Pro. They're tight enough that you have to, when you're like installing the Optic, set the Optic on top of the bosses, and then I'm just pushing down with my thumb just firmly, and you'll just feel them kind of snap or slide down those bosses. This is the same deal. Again, if you had the plate just pushed on the gun and the Optic just pushed on the plate, I've done this before, should have taken a video, but hold it upside down or do the same thing, we'll let the slide slap shut and it doesn't fall off. So I was impressed just how tightly everything fit together. Not that you would go shoot it without screws, obviously, but I was impressed just how tightly it all fit together, because there's enough issues with optics coming loose and plates coming loose. Having it fit snugly together, of course, isn't going to be a bad thing. So I was impressed with the plate, the hardware, the way it's labeled, paint pen, originally Vibratight, now Loctite. Anyway, all the products, it's all systems go for me because I like how well it's labeled. If you're a person that likes to read instructions, here's a QR code, so you can get a hold of that. There's a video. So anyway, all pretty cool. This product, like I said, the screws on each side, has this shroud. The shroud's not for everyone. It doesn't bother me. I've shot matches with this and had on this gun for a year, and it works fine. But Jordan's good about listening to feedback. And again, he's like, good, bad, or ugly. What do you like, not like? What do you wish was different? And Nick Young and I both had the same feedback. And I said, it's fine, but I don't do anything cool. I'm not going to jump out of a helicopter, rack my gun off my boot, or whatever, tumble down the side of a mountain. So I would rather just have a little bit thinner plate to not have the thickness for those 2 holes, which is where this one came from, the Lowrider. The Lowrider is, as you can tell, just a little bit thinner plate, which makes the optics just a tick lower, but it's the same attention to detail for all the other stuff. All said and done, I probably now, well, so the Walther, the plate that comes with the Walther, by the way, is fine, no issues, but I do like Jordan's plate better just because the attention to detail, the way the optic snaps in, just having it all fit tighter can't be a bad thing, especially considering how many rounds we put through them, and having something come loose is super annoying. Also, I like the fact that Jordan ships these with a paint pen. If you aren't using this, or even if you don't buy from him, you should be using this anyway. It's super helpful just to witness mark the screws. So just put a line through, that way you can tell if the screws back out or move. So anyway, that's something you should be doing anyway, but I like that he just includes that because, of course, that's cutting into his profit margin. He doesn't have to ship those. People are going to buy the plate either way. Total, I probably have, I don't know, 6, 8 Walthers, something like that, set up with his plates. No issues so far with anything breaking. Steger has some Glocks, some Walthers, a bunch of different ones in the rotation also. No issues. I won't talk too much hate, but I'll just say, in comparison to customer service is also important, and hopefully you buy the product, you never have an issue. When I was waiting for the Delta Point Pro pattern to come out for Walther, I got a sight from, I don't think it even been released yet, from Vortex, a Defender XL, and I wanted a Delta Point Pro plate. At the time, Jordan wasn't making them. He's like, oh, I'm like, hey, just so you know, this new site's coming out that you're going to want to support. It's going to be a big deal. I was like, okay, cool. So while I was waiting for a prototype from him, I looked around, and a competitor made one. So I just bought it at retail, ordered one because I was anxious to try the site. Inside, there was just the plate and then a little bag with some screws. The screws came in two different lengths, a short and a long one. I tried the long ones first, just barely, not even using any pressure, just tightening them down to see when they stopped. They bottomed out with enough clearance left where the Optic could bounce up and down. That clearly wasn't the right one. The plate slid around. It wasn't a tight fit, whatever. Just has to get me by a month or so. So I figured the shorter screws were the ones to use. And put a little Loctite on, kind of started to snug them down. Like, yep, it seems right. Okay, cool. It's already Loctited, torque them in place with what they recommended from the company. And through that model, it won't be tough to figure out, but through that model, whereas this is permanently attached to the plate, the threaded part that the Optic attaches to, that one's removable with T-posts, and wouldn't you know it, while torquing it to the spec they recommended, the T-post broke. So like, hey, I'm probably the idiot. Could I just buy one of these little T-posts that probably cost 50 cents? Email their customer service. It ended up being an email chain of no exaggeration, 6 to 8 emails back and forth of what Optic am I using. They weren't familiar with the Optic, I don't think, because it like a prototype, I guess. They asked me a bunch of questions. They want to see pictures of the screws, picture of the broken T-posts, pictures of what screws. I couldn't just say it was the shorter screws in the package. They want to see a picture of them. All this stuff for like $5 worth of hardware. And then they asked me if I'd watched the video that came. I was supposed to go to their website to watch a video, which I did not watch. I was dumb for that. And I think it got to the point I could buy a replacement hardware pack or something, but it's like $5 or $10. Anyway, I just thanked them for their time and I just stopped replying. And honestly, I just threw the plate in the garbage. I just wasn't going to mess with it anymore. I just let it play out. I didn't put them on blast or anything like that. At the time, I was just like, I'm just curious to see how this interaction is going to play out. And that told me everything I needed to know. So I just threw the plate away and waited until Jordan had a prototype ready for me. The reason I mention this is I've had people that I've never interacted with before. I have no idea who they are. I've recommended Jordan's plates or talked about them before on social media. And I've had a couple random people message me saying basically praises about Jordan, but one of which was fairly recently. He bought the plate. It ended up, it was operator error, but he couldn't figure it out, or he thought the tolerances were off or something wasn't right. So Jordan FaceTimed him, whether it's his personal phone or work phone, whatever. He FaceTimes this guy so he could have a gun in his hand while the customer has their plate and their gun in their hand, walking him through what's going on. It turned out it was just a misunderstanding or operator error. Got the guy figured out so he could get his plate installed. But Jordan just does this kind of stuff all the time. I get stories like this all the time, which it's a smaller startup company now. Maybe it's not a startup anymore, but it's a smaller company still. I'm sure as they get bigger with more sales, maybe he'll have customer service people do that, or it'll have to change. But at any rate, if you're talking to Jordan, I'm sure he'd say he'd do that forever. He only has so many hours in a day. But anyway, it just kind of speaks to the, like, Jordan as a person and the product. So anyway, if you're buying an Optics plate, I think Arise Manufacturing is the one to buy, just because I like the tight tolerances. I like that everything's labeled. Again, compared to other products where it just comes in a bag and you have to sort through it, I like a little bit of hand holding, and they even give me the Torx bit I need. Step 1, use this to attach the plate to the gun. Step 2, this Optic, attach this one. The Loctite's already there. The paint pen's already there. It just takes all the guesswork out. So the last thing I will say is, if you have, it won't be tough to figure out what plate I'm talking about, I'm sure. Ben's had the same experience breaking them as well as a lot of other people I know. If you have a product you like, or a different plate company, whatever, and it's working well and you like it, there's no reason to sell something you have, or I guess you wouldn't be selling it, replacing something you have that's already working well. I don't think that's the case at all. If it's for duty, professional use, and the company is a bit sus, I could see replacing that early, just because if it's life-saving equipment, you'd replace parts on the airplane before they actually go bad. And if you have sus hardware in your attaching your optic to your firearm, maybe replacing that ahead of time makes sense. But otherwise, for everybody else, I would not suggest buying Jordan's plates or Arise's plates just to get rid of whatever you have. But if you're in the market for something, that's the place I would start, just because I like the attention to detail. I like that there's 3 of everything, all the screws, it all works. I haven't personally had any issues where I ever had to send anything back, but of course that kind of stuff is going to happen. And if it does, they actually support it since, like I said, Jordan's just a nice guy. So anyway, that is real talk. If you're going to buy an Optic plate, I would recommend the lowrider model, but if the duty style or the shroud interests you, I get that too. But for most people, just having a well-made plate to attach your optic to your gun is what you want. So anyway, that's real talk. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or Jordan stories, feel free to drop them below in the comments.